Hello, everybody. I got so distracted watching everybody's introductions that I didn't notice it is now 11:01 a.m. It's time to get started. So today we're going to be talking about building a workspace from scratch. I am Maria Gabriela Ochoa Perez Wechter. I'm a senior outbound product manager for the platform Web UX team. And today I am joined by my teammate.
My name is Brad Tilton. I am also a PM on the outbound team for Platform Web UX, which includes Next Experience, UI Builder, Workspaces, and all sorts of things that touch the UI.
I like to say that I work on what looks good and feels good about ServiceNow. So let's go ahead and go on to the next slide and go over some quick housekeeping items. You should use the Q&A for questions. It helps us gather the questions to post them after the session. Use the chat for comments and the Q&A for questions. And the session is being recorded, and the slides and video will be made available at a later time and date. And these sessions are for you. Please ask questions, interact. We've got access to Brad for the next hour, so it's the best time to ask questions on this topic. It's not just a presentation. We'll be in the product, configuring it live, a little bit more live than usual. And we'll be back again soon. Our next session is going to be November 15th at 11 a.m. Eastern. We're going to be talking about the new guided tours and workspaces. So I am very excited. We're going to have another guest, an old star of the show, Ashley Snyder, joining us for that. And now we're ready to turn it over to Brad to tell us about Workspaces. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Gabby. Let's talk Workspaces. So before we get into it, we have everybody's favorite slide. I may say something forward-looking at some point during this hour that we're spending together. Don't make any financial decisions based on what I say. You should be planning on what we currently have in the product, and things can always slide or move up or move down in terms of release priority. All right, so today we're going to be talking workspaces, and specifically kind of a third type of workspace that we've not talked much about before on on the Academy or on any of our U&I Builder live shows. But before we get into it, we're just going to kind of level set on workspaces a little bit, what some of the different terminologies are, and some good practices for workspaces. So this is just to kind of level set our tech stack here. We've got, we've got this Next Experience UI framework that is a web component-based development framework that allows you to build components and then build out, pretty sophisticated experiences based on these components. There are a couple of branches here coming up from that. On the left, you'll see that we build and ship a number of configurable workspaces. At this point, we're at more than 50. Workspaces, almost all of our products have a corresponding workspace or experience, like Service Operations Workspace for ITSM, CSM Configurable Workspace for CSM, HR Agent Workspace for HR, and the list goes on and on. I'll have a few of those on a slide in a little bit, and we'll talk a little bit more about why we think that you should start with one of those workspaces if you want to have your users be using a workspace. The other branch here is App Engine Studio related. So if you have a custom application, obviously we can't ship a workspace for a custom application. So in that case, you can use App Engine Studio to spin up a workspace for you. And App Engine Studio also has a tool embedded within it called Workspace Builder that makes it easier to work with workspaces that are created from App Engine Studio. Again, App Engine Studio is a low-code development tool, so that Workspace Builder is really targeted at our low-code personas that are using App Engine Studio, so not the standard ServiceNow developer or admin. This is two use cases. We're going to talk about a third use case, but first we are going to level set real quick on agent workspace versus configurable workspaces. I almost didn't include this slide, but it can be helpful. Agent Workspace is our older technology. We released it in the New York release, which maybe somebody can tell me how many years ago that was. I don't even remember. It was a good start for kind of a new UI, but it was not very configurable. That was the main problem with it. So you couldn't do a lot. The pages are pretty kind of built in and black boxed. And so that was a lot of the feedback we got was it's not configurable enough for us. We have these, I have an incident form that has all this crazy stuff on it. We really like the way it works, but I'd love to have a tabbed interface with a little bit more control over the form. And so that's when we came out with configurable workspaces in the Quebec release, as well as UI Builder. So those both came out in Quebec. And configurable workspaces, this is where you have a workspace for every application. This is, yeah, it's just a lot more configurable than our standard workspaces.
Is that why they're called configurable workspaces?
It is why they're called configurable workspaces. I don't love how many syllables are in configurable workspaces, but I have said it enough times to where I think I can say it. This slide's way out of date. Good job, Brad. Where to start with workspaces? We are shipping more than 50 configurable workspaces in Vancouver. Most of our products have a workspace. They are built to be configured and extended. You can implement one of these, and then if it's got a page that you think should look different, you can duplicate that page into a new variant to where the original still gets updates from us, and the new variant can be customized however you want it to be. You can add new pages to it. So we think there's a lot of room within these workspaces that we're shipping for you to create really custom experiences within those workspaces. The next one we've talked about a little bit, using App Engine Studio to create a workspace for your custom application. App Engine Studio is going to do basically all of the things that I'm going to show you in the demo today. App Engine Studio does it in one click and does even more than that, and then allows you to work with that workspace really easily. If you're not licensed for App Engine Studio and for whatever reason you can't use one of the out-of-the-box workspaces, it is possible to create a workspace from scratch, but it is fairly difficult and not really that well documented. And that's where we're going to spend time today, is kind of walking through that part of it. And there are things that are in our workspaces that we ship by default that won't be available to you, where you might have to create your own custom component, or you may not be able to fully replicate one of those things. So again, that's why we think you should start with one of those workspaces. Some of the more popular workspaces are on the slide here. So Service Operations Workspace, Alignment Planner Workspace, CSM, HR. I've talked about some of these, so those are all available. And to answer this question before it comes up, there's a question in the Q&A. Can AES be used to modify a configurable workspace? AES can only modify workspaces that are created through AES. So you can't use AES and Workspace Builder to work with like Service Operations Workspace. That was this slide here. So AES Workspace Builder only work with workspaces created through AES. And then for this one other question. We always get a question, we always get a question about, is there a list of all of the out-of-the-box workspaces? There's not a list. We're adding so many and they're changing. That what you really need to do is if you have an app that you want to migrate users to a workspace for, you can look at that app's documentation and it'll kind of tell you, where they are with workspaces. We also have So it looks like we still have questions about what works where in terms of UI Builder and Workspace Builder. So UI Builder, you can modify any workspace with UI Builder or any experience with UI Builder, but Workspace Builder and App Engine Studio are specific to workspaces created through App Engine Studio. We do consider UI Builder to be a pro-code development tool right now. We're trying to bring it more into the kind of middle code area with a lot of our other tools, but at the moment, I think we would say it's a pro-code tool. All right, a couple of good practices for workspaces before we get into the actual meat of today's session, the demo in the instance. But for Workspace, you should start with the workspace-specific documentation for whatever workspace you are going to implement. If you're implementing an out-of-the-box workspace, some of the workspaces do things a little bit differently. For example, Service Operations Workspace has a home page, a landing page that has a lot going on. And how you update that landing page is different than how you would do the CSM configurable workspace landing page. The nice thing is all of Service Operations Workspace is really well documented. So if you do need to update something, it is in the documentation. So start with the documentation for that workspace. Not only is it going to tell you how to, set things up, but it'll also kind of show you how the workspace works and how it should be used. The next one here is extend. So again, implement one of our out-of-the-box workspaces and then extend it by duplicating pages into new variants and that sort of thing. And then the last thing that I'll mention before we get into the demo is that because all of these workspaces are purpose-built for their application, so Service Operations Workspace is built to be the absolute best user experience for ITSM and ITOM agents. And CSM is built to be the best user experience for CSM agents. Those experiences could be different because those apps just work a little differently. So there may be things that work one way in one workspace and work differently in a different workspace. And so, that's one of the reasons why the workspace specific documentation is so important.
And something real quick to note is that the product names here get a little bit confusing once you hit a specific workspace that Brad has in that screenshot. We have agent workspaces, which is the legacy version of workspaces that are not configurable and you cannot necessarily make changes to. And then there's the product called configurable workspaces, which is what we suggest you work in, what we suggest you work off of, and what you can build with UI Builder and App Engine Studio. But there is a configurable workspace called Agent Workspace for HR case management. And you can see at the very end of that screenshot how it says configurable. That's a configurable workspace called Agent Workspace. So that's just a little bit of a clarification I wanted to make from a question we had in the chat.
Yes, we're not in charge of the naming. I'll just stop there. But yeah, the docs do a pretty good job of, it says legacy on the agent workspace and configurable on the configurable workspace. All right, it's demo time. Let's see if I can smoothly move into the demo.
Brad, do we have any migration guidance for going from agent workspaces to configurable workspaces?
The primary migration guidance is to look at the specific configurable workspace you're wanting to go to. So the different BUs, the different application teams have kind of documented like when they're sunsetting their agent workspace, and then also any specific migration guidance for that workspace. But we also do have an article out in the COE that's kind of a high level. Here's what to look at. But the different workspaces are so different. We don't have like super specific, centralized documentation on migrating. And so I would add, there's no migration tool. You don't click a button and it's basically a new workspace implementation to configurable workspaces. We are not planning. We have no plans to introduce a third type of workspace at this point. So you should feel fairly safe moving into a configurable workspace. All right, so let's go ahead and get into this. We had another question: is there an easy way to determine whether it's a legacy workspace or a config workspace? We're going to look at this table in a minute, but if you go to the experiences table, anything that shows up in the is that right? If it can be opened in UI Builder, it's generally a configurable workspace.
I like to look at the UI of it. If it's got like squarish corners, it doesn't really comply to the theme you have going on. It's a agent workspace.
Yeah, that's a good one. So before we get into the demo, we just had a bunch of questions come in. I'm just going to kind of rapid fire answer these. So where do we find specific workspace documentation? It's on the docs site. So you go to the docs for whatever application you're looking at, and if it has a workspace, there will be workspace documentation. So I want to create my own configurable workspace. I'd like to grab pages and layouts and components from ServiceNow Shift Workspace and piece my workspace together. So right now you can't pull something, you can't pull a page in from another workspace into a different workspace. Most of the components are available in different workspaces, although some BUs have built custom components that aren't available in the toolbox. We are looking at ways to be able to use pages between workspaces, but in the case of a store app, that wouldn't really help you because you wouldn't be able to pull it into the app per se. We have no plans on, there is no current target release for deprecating the classic environment, which would be, or core UI, which would be UI 16. And then we have another very specific question. I would ask that one out on the community, or if we have around selecting a drop. I don't think we have time to address that now. All right, so let's take a look at building a workspace from scratch. So to set this up a little bit, you know, we think you should be using out-of-the-box workspaces or App Engine Studio, but there is an edge case where you may need to create a workspace and you may not be licensed for App Engine Studio. So that could be, you know, maybe you have most of your users using Service Operations Workspace, and then you have a subset of users that needs just totally different functionality, to where building that into Service Operations Workspace would be harder than just standing up a super simple workspace for another set of users. And that's kind of the use case we're going to go with here. Another one would be like, maybe you have some sort of custom app functionality, but you're not licensed for App Engine Studio, which can exist. So in that case, you might need to spin up a workspace for that. I will say all of these workspaces that we're shipping by default have a lot of development time behind them. And so I would, you know, you're not going to be able to recreate Service Operations Workspace easily building a workspace from scratch. So I still think these workspaces that you build from scratch should really be, you know, smaller workspaces for smaller sets of users, and they will be kind of limited, even though I'll show you how to do it. All right, so I've got a new scoped app created called Scratch Workspace. It has absolutely nothing in it. It's just an app. And so we're going to walk through a few steps. This recording will be available, and then we're going to document all of these steps in an article on the community as well. But I'm gonna start by opening UI Builder. We had a question, sharing pages between workspace if we configure the incident record. Pages are not available to be shared between workspaces. So if you edit the incident view of a record and just move fields around, that view is available in multiple places. If you go in and duplicate the record page into a new variant and make changes, that's only going to exist in the workspace that you're working in. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and hit create in UI Builder, and we're going to create a new workspace. And we will call this Scratch Workspace. I don't think this exists. Oh, and I have to select an app shell, so we're going to select the Workspace app shell. I'm going to leave the roles alone. I could add roles to this. So let's go ahead and hit create. And this is going to create me an experience, and I'm going to open it. And so right now, this is a totally blank experience. And so this is the point where if you had to do this without watching this video, the best thing to do is just look at one of the out-of-the-box workspaces and start recreating what's in that workspace. But we're going to create kind of the most bare bones version of a workspace here. So we're going to start by creating some pages. And we're going to create 3 pages. We're going to create a record page, a list page, and a landing page. And so the record page, we're going to use the standard record page template. And we're just going to call it record. And it comes with a bunch of parameters. So that looks good to me. And I'm going to hit create. It's going to create us this page, and then we're not going to have to do anything else to it. So the page is created. I can open it in UIB if I wanted to. For this page, I'm basically going to pass it a table and a sysid, and it's going to open a record. It's not too dissimilar to the form page that exists by default at table name table name underscore form dot do, whatever it is. To where it's pretty generic. I could create variants of this record page for specific records if I wanted to handle them differently, or for specific tables. We're not going to do that. Next, I'm going to create a list page. So one of the things that you'll see here is we've got these newer templates up at the top. And then we've got legacy templates. So we don't have a new template for the list page yet. And you'll see one of the problems with the legacy templates when we create parameters for it. And then I'm going to do this copy contents of page, which means I fully own this page because I'm creating it from scratch. There's not a great reason for me to use the original page because we kind of change this anyway in the future. We can't add parameters through here. I'm going to say looks good. We're going to create it.
What version is your instance on?
Vancouver.
And when did the standard record page come out?
Tokyo. All right, so for the list page, we actually are going to add some URL parameters to this page because it's expecting them. So I'm going to go to general, and we're going to add 3. I think they're optional. Yep. So you can get these from any existing list page, but I have them written down. We've got list ID, config ID, and tiny ID. And so these all help build this page out. I'm going to save it. All right, and then we're going to build one more page here. And that's going to be a landing page. And so I'm going to create this one from scratch. No, we're going to call it home. I'm going to call it home because by default, my workspace is going to default to a page named home when I open it. That can be changed, but it saves me a step when I do this. All right, and we're going to configure the home page real quickly. I'm going to add a component. It's defaulting me to layouts because there's nothing on the page. This is a Vancouver feature. We're just going to do let's go side panels. No, I don't like the way that looks. Let's go just one column in my column layout. Can I not add padding? we'll just put things in the middle. And then I'm going to add a stylized text component.
Could it be under the column layout instead?
It may be column layout instead of column one. Let's say landing page, because I am creative. All right, so I'm going to save that. This is our landing page. Obviously, you would have more on your landing page, right? I sure hope you'd have more on your landing page after a while. So let's go ahead and well, let's take a look at this workspace. So if I open the workspace, I just get a page that says landing page. I don't have a menu on the left and I don't have any tabs. That is a problem for me. So we're going to go back and we're going to start adding some of these other things. And this is where it gets, well, it's not difficult. It's difficult to figure out initially, but hopefully it gets way easier now that we're doing this. All right, so I'm going to go back to the experience view of the workspace itself. I'm going to click into settings. And you'll notice we've got some things here. So my landing path was automatically set to home, but now I could set it to one of the other options there. What we're going to do is we're going to set up the side navigation. And one of the nice things is once I add some things to this, it's going to automatically create some stuff for me to where I'll have the side navigation. So I want a home page on the side navigation. Let's call it home. I also want the list page. Call it list. And then I think that's good. So let's go ahead and save it. And then you'll notice that I refresh this. It's not showing up here. This was my test one when I made sure that this was possible. This is my test one, so it's not showing up in Workspaces in the Workspaces list yet. So we will we'll show how to do that. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and just open the home page, and we will open it in the editor and make sure that we get. All right, now we have a menu on the left. So this is good. So if I click into here, we should get the list page. I don't have any lists defined for my experience yet. We will do that, but at least this menu is here. What's not here is my tabs up at the top, which is upsetting to me. So we're gonna add tabs. And so I think the way that we're gonna do this is, I go to settings. I think app config is, no, this is the one we want. No, so I'm going to go and open up my experience from the experiences page. So I'm going to open up my Scratch workspace. And we've got a couple of things going on in this record. We're going to spend a lot of time in the UX page properties. And so let's talk about UX page properties real quick. So these page properties are basically experience-specific properties that the app shell and UIB can read from and configure things. So we've got maybe 50 workspaces all using this workspace app shell, but things like the menu should be different for each workspace. I should be able to have the little plus sign when I want to click on it and open something. That should work differently for every workspace. So these are basically experience or workspace specific settings that you're setting here. A lot of it is going to happen through JSON. I guess future looking statement, we are looking at pulling more and more of this type of configuration into UI Builder itself. The goal is to have people not have to edit JSON to configure experiences. So right now we are going to add some JSON, but you'll notice that we added this Chrome toolbar from within the experience view in UI Builder. I didn't have to build out any of this JSON, but we are going to add some more here. The first thing I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to add this UX application category M2M. This is going to make this experience show up in my workspace list. So let's add it. It is pretty easy. Workspace category. That's right. So that's my workspace. Sure, we'll give it an order. Submit. And then if I do a hard refresh, this may require a log out and log back in. I can't remember. I may have to log out and back in for this to show up. So we'll do that in a minute when we get to a stopping point. All right, so let's add some page properties here. So the first one we are going to add is probably the most complicated one, and that's going to add our tabbing. And surprisingly enough, it's called Chrome Tab. It is a JSON UX page property, and I have some JSON to add in here. I just grabbed this JSON from another workspace. But let's talk through a little bit about what we're doing. So this is going to add a few things. It's going to allow us to do some tabbing, and we've got some properties here around how many tabs can we have open on the main tab, and then how many tabs is our limit for the sub tabs. And then this whole thing right here is on the tab itself. There's a little plus sign, and if you click the plus sign, you can do something like create a new record. And so what we're doing here is we're saying if somebody clicks on the plus sign, I'm going to create a new incident record. So I'm going to go ahead and add this in here, and then we'll say tab configuration. All right, so let's log out and back in and see if that workspace shows up.
While you're logging back in, we have a question. Is this where we would remove interaction as well? We have that as an option and do not utilize interactions.
Yes, that UX page property that I showed is where you control anything to do with the plus sign. So yeah, you could remove new interaction from that plus sign menu. All right, our Scratch workspace is here, so I'm going to click into it, and we have tabs. All right, and so when I click on the plus sign, because I only have one option, it's going to directly kick me into our record page that we created, and it's going to create a new incident. All right, so another thing that we want to configure here is our list page. But before we do that, I think we want to... Yes, this is being recorded. We're going to post it, and then I'm also going to post my outline of all the steps that we went through.
Brad, how would you move a sub-prod workspace to prod?
Just like any other development that you do. So everything that you do is captured in an update set. So if I was creating a net new workspace, I would do it in a scope tab, and that will make it much easier to move. But so this specifically, I created this Scratch workspace scope tab up here, and the only thing in it is this workspace, and it's going to work with the incident table. One of the nice things about this new framework and UI Builder is that it is built to work with scopes natively. So I don't think I've ever run into a cross-scoping issue from within UIB itself. So it should just work with scoping. And any new workspace you create, I'd create it in a scope app. One other thing we're going to add here is the Chrome main tab, or the Chrome main. What do we call this? UX page property. How much time do we have? Okay, we're doing all right. Wow. I gotta move some stuff around. I don't remember what is in this.
Can you use source control to make changes to out-of-the-box workspaces and promote that between instances?
Yeah, so there's development is not different for workspaces. So however you're managing your development, you can do that for workspaces and UI Builder. So source control, app repo, update sets, anything that you're working in. I saw a couple of questions. Documentation on there. We don't have an extensive list of documentation for all page properties, partially because UX page properties can also be like system properties. And so you can create your own page properties and reference those from within UI Builder. And some of our workspaces may have additional properties that they're referencing. There are some common ones like the ones we're using here. And I believe maybe some of those are partially documented. But again, our end goal is that you don't even have to worry about page properties. It'll all be in the instance or in UI Builder. Sorry, I'm grabbing the JSON that goes in here from another experience. I should have just done that in this tab. All right, and so this is basically just setting some other things. The nice thing about these UX page properties is that we are, like I have said a few times, we're shipping 50 plus workspaces and they all have UX page properties. So you can kind of go through and see how things are configured in other workspaces. We did have a question around controlling based on role. Yes, you can control both the menu items and what's in that plus sign based on role. And I think there's some workspaces doing that. It's just part of the JSON in there. All right, so I just added this Chrome main tab, which is just going to give us a few more properties here. And so one of the last ones we want to do is set up our list functionality. And so again, with App Engine Studio, I automatically get some lists set up and everything works. If I'm doing it in a workspace, it works a little differently. I don't think I logged out, right? Oh, I did. Yeah, I logged out. So we're going to go to the list page, and it's going to kick us back over into maybe. Come on.
Of course, I'll unmute. While you're looking that up, I'm going to quickly plug UI Builder Live. It's a show that we do on the second and fourth Thursday of every month. And we go a bit more in depth than we typically do on these academies as far as UI Builder development goes. So it's a great place for you to come and ask questions. It's a lot more laid back and casual. It's a lot of fun, and it's a great place for you to learn. I posted the link to the playlist in the comments in the chat section if you want to take a look at that. And you don't have to sign up like you have to sign up for academies. It's just a YouTube live that you can attend.
All right, so I am opening up the list page that we created from the template. I'm going to go to List Nav here, and I am going to click on Configuration. And this is going to give me all of my UX list menu configurations. There should be about one for every workspace. And I'm going to click New here. And we're just going to call this Scratch Workspace Config. I'm going to save. And then this is where I build out my list categories and lists for this experience. So let's add we're just going to add an all incidents list. All right, and then we're going to add a list inside of that list category. I'm just going to call it all. It's going to point at the incident table. It is my Scratch workspace config. And instead of columns, I'm going to give it a view. And let's give it an order. Since it's all, and I'm probably going to be creating more, we're going to give it 1,000. There are a lot of different things I can do with the list here, as you can see, but we're just going to leave it. I'm going to hit submit. And then we're going to go back to the list menu configuration. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab the sysid of this list menu configuration. And then we're going to create a new UX page property. And it's going to be called list config ID. And the value is going to be the sysid of that list configuration. And so this is how you tie a set of lists to a workspace, is through that UX page property. So we've got this list config ID, and if I go back into my workspace and refresh the page, because it's going to give me a cached version by default, I now have a list that shows up, and we've got the list here. So if I click into this, it'll give me that record in a new tab. We get my fun Vancouver feature where the form kind of optimizes itself based on the browser width here. I'll stop dragging things back and forth because it's probably not as fun to watch as it is to do. And then one other thing that we'll do real quick before we take some more questions is I'm going to go back to my experience. And we're not actually going to create any declarative actions. But there is an action config action. That's it. So we are going to create a new action config here. Scratch workspace config. I think this is kind of how we're doing the naming on these. And then I'm going to grab the sysid of that. And we're going to go back to my application. And we're going to create a new property called action config ID. And again, if you are using an out-of-the-box workspace or App Engine Studio, all of these records are already created for you and configured. Which is what we think you should be doing. But in the edge case where you have to create your own workspace, these are really all of the steps you have to do to stand up an initial workspace. There is another step you could take that we're not going to if you wanted to add like Analytics Center to your workspace. That's actually pretty well documented. But for the most part, this is it. So if we just go back to our workspace, go home, we can just, we can see that it's working fairly well at this point. I can create new pages. I could add more list items here. I could create some really interactive pages if I wanted to do, create something totally custom in UI Builder and add it to my workspace. I could do that. I can add tabs to the record page, all sorts of things. But these are kind of the first 6 or so steps that people generally struggle with, any JSON that I pasted in, we will document that in the article we publish. And so the way that that'll work is we'll do some editing on this episode. And then we'll post it to the Next Experience Academy community page. And then from there, I think we'll link to the article where we go into details, and we'll have the video in the article as well.
Thank you so much. Somewhere in there, did we end up adding the new sidebar component to the record page, or is this a topic for a new session, you think?
I think that is a topic for a new session. So let's go back and look at a couple more slides. So yeah, the sidebar, that may be a topic for another session, or that could be something we do on Even iBuilder Live or something like that. So how does Vancouver determine? So for standard record pages, I showed how the fields change. It's all hard coded. I think it's pixels, and so it's hard coded based on how the form looks best. So that's not something that's changeable. All right, so some resources. Our Next Experience community. We are on there a lot trying to answer questions and point people to the right resources. If you go to Product Hub's platform, Next Experience, you'll get to the community. That's a great place to go for help. The Center of Excellence exists on that community. This is an older screenshot. We've got a lot of Vancouver articles in there now, but that's where we publish any new content that we put out gets published there. There is a UI Builder Fundamentals course on Now Learning. It is updated for Utah, and we're working on getting it updated for Vancouver. We've got our Academy playlist. We also have the UI Builder live show that Gabby mentioned that we do on the 2nd and 4th Thursday of the month. If you want more, I don't think you need the QR code if you're already on the Academy. And then we do more academies as well. So this is the Next Experience Academy. We've got a number of different platform-related academies, but there we go. So let's take some questions. We've got about 10 minutes. I just saw a random question in the chat that says, is Service Portal going to be deprecated sooner in the future? We have no plans to deprecate Service Portal at this point. So if I needed a new enterprise portal for request and knowledge right now, I would create a net new service portal. It would be interesting to compare and contrast building a workspace from scratch using AES versus UI Builder. So basically, I don't think we would compare those, just because if you have access to build a workspace using AES and Workspace Builder, you should do that and not do it from scratch, because it's way easier. But yeah, so any questions, you can stick in the chat or the Q&A, but if you put it in the Q&A, it'll be a little easy for us afterwards if we can't answer it right now.
We have a question. Can you create custom filters and point it to the workspace? For example, incident assigned to X group, but just utilizing the new workspace.
Where would you want that to show up? I don't know what that means, to be honest. Was the performance analytics session canceled, or did I don't know anything about the Performance Analytics Academy outside of giving a link to it here. Can you configure different form headers for different teams? So in UI Builder, I mentioned page variants. So we created 3 pages. We could have created multiple variants for each of those pages. And your variants can be keyed off of URL parameters or user roles. And so, yeah, if you had 3 different users with 3 different roles, you could show them 3 different versions of a page. Any other questions? We've got a couple of minutes here.
And these questions have been great. Y'all have been keeping me very busy this entire time.
A lot of good questions. Gabby and I are also available on the sndevs.com Slack, which is an independently run Slack community. You can get to it through sndevs.com. And we're both very available on there. Is the checklist custom, or is there a template out of the box? I'm not sure what that refers to. Out-of-box workspaces availability, we would like the procurement workspace. So for specific workspace questions, since we have over 50 workspaces, I can't answer any specific workspace questions. Maybe a little bit of service operations workspace. But if you've got a licensing question on whether or not you can enable a workspace, you'll need to talk to your account team about that. We had a question in the chat. How do you configure the options on the far right when in an incident? So on the record page, that thing on the far right is called the contextual sidebar, and it's just a tab component. So There's actually two versions of the record page, so this works a little differently depending on what version you're on. But the newest version that most of our workspaces will be implementing, I think, pretty soon, it's just a tab component. So you can go into UI Builder and create a new tab and have it show up there. So are there plans to have dedicated support we can reach out to quickly for Workspace? So our enablement and support model is the same for UI Builder and Workspaces as all of our platform features. So you would get support the same way you get support for Flow Designer. So if there's a bug, you can open a case. The community has a lot of great resources. We have the academies. There's a UI Builder Live show, and there's all sorts of independent developer communities as well that people are on. So lots of different areas. There's no dedicated area.
Something that I do want to plug for that is if you're having trouble with troubleshooting in Next Experience, recently they just came out with a new Chrome extension that helps you with that. If you check out the Q&A section, we made a whole UI Builder Live episode on it. I'll also post it in the chat. And that can help you figure out how to troubleshoot stuff. We talked with the devs and product management who made it. It was super awesome.
Yep. Another question, UI Builder and AES are the tools to build configurable workspaces, and Service Portal remains the tool to build enterprise portals. That is absolutely correct. One of the ways to break that down is for a fulfiller persona. We generally want them working in workspaces, and UI Builder is the tool for workspaces. And not necessarily App Engine Studio. The UI Builder is kind of the primary tool there, but if you've got a custom App Engine Studio created workspace, you can use that. And then Service Portal remains the tool for enterprise service portals, anything that needs catalog, public pages, pixel perfect design, things like that. For UI 16, again, there is no planned deprecation of UI 16. We have no projected lifespan. All right, I'll give it about 30 more seconds for any more questions to come in. I love questions, so if you have them, go ahead and ask them.
So that's a great question, Anonymous. And something important to note is that upon upgrade to Vancouver, every customer will have Next Experience enabled for themselves. We had a previous Academy session on this where I give some options and go further into detail about this. I'll link it when I answer your question. You are able to easily flip to Next Experience for yourself and or enable it on a group by group basis. There is more information on that in that Academy session as well. And sorry, Brad, I think I cut you off on answering that.
No, you're good. Yeah, so yeah, you can enable the Next Experience UI for just a pilot group if you want to. If you're creating a workspace on Utah, you should be able to do that and upgrade to Vancouver without a problem. UI Builder did get some really good Vancouver enhancements. Workspaces got some good enhancements, but nothing that would prevent you from using them in the future. If you go back to last month's Academy session, we went into a lot of detail on all of the new Workspace and UI Builder enhancements in Vancouver.
And that video should be posted sometime this week.
Yeah, we had something come in through the chat. Can you try to use the content tree component during the next session? This is probably as technical as we'll get with Academy sessions, but we will add that to our list of, we have a list of hard to configure components that we want to go through on the UI Builder Live show that we may add that to. Next experience question. Any chance when you click on an unpinned menu header that the cursor could automatically be set to the filter box? Didn't we add that in a release? Am I dreaming? Maybe it's...
I think it did come for the all menu. I think it did come in a later release.
Yeah, I think in Vancouver, when you click the all menu, the cursor automatically goes to the filter. All right, 2 minutes left. I'll give it another 30-second countdown. Still have most people sticking around, so thanks, y'all. I'm at 15 seconds. Type fast.
So, Tara, the way that I like to do it is to look at the UI elements because the new configurable workspaces align more closely to your theme. So those tend to have rounded edges. If you're using the default Polaris theme, they're purple. versus the agency legacy the legacy agent workspaces are more square and green. Or the best thing you can do is check out the documentation for the specific workspace you're looking at. That will give you the for sure answer.
Yeah.
And the link to the Slack channel is sndevs.com. We have a channel you can join called next-experience-uib-workspace, where we hang out in all day long. And after work too, unfortunately. I'm addicted to Slack. Thank you all so very much for joining us today. Be sure to turn back in next month, November 15th at the same time, same place, for a guided tours on Workspaces presentation. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, all.
Bye.